go ahead and get started. I'm glad everybody had a chance to taste a little bit first, so it'll make you less anxious as we go through the program. I'm Harry Carver, and I chair the Franklin County Community Fund, and I'm going to take a minute to explain why the Community Fund is here and why we're involved in this project, or a number of projects, if you will. A number of years ago, a group of folks, including our mayor, we decided that we were a little perplexed why the capital city didn't have a permanent community endowment. We didn't have a community foundation, and how could that be? So we started looking around and realized that you can't, in the greater scheme of things, it's very hard to have a community foundation in a community our size without having a sizable endowment, as Penny will probably tell you about sizable endowments. But so we looked around and looked at it, and we found that the Bluegrass Community Foundation out of Lexington served our area. They agreed to provide us staff support to get us started. So I guess 4 or 5 years ago, we created an endowment which now has close to $300,000, and we're able to start making small grants. But probably, and I want to talk a little bit about endowments because it's a weird thing for people. People, the idea of giving something to a fund that never goes away, it stays forever. You have to be, people have to be responsible for it years after we're all gone. But the one way that I think to think about endowments, and it's about money and about money changing hands between generations. And several years ago, there was a study done on the transfer of wealth, and they looked at the transfer of wealth in every county across the state. And in Franklin County, over the next 10 years, $1.2 billion is going to move from one generation to the next. That's a lot of money. And if everybody in this room, if we all across the county decided that we were going to commit 5% of our estate to the community endowment, that would be $608 million. That's a lot of money. And that $608 million would generate over $3 million a year in grants for local community efforts to make Frankfort an even better place to live. So just start thinking of it that way. Your kids are not going to miss, whether you're worth $5 million or $5,000, your kids are not going to miss 5% of it. So think about it that way and how we grow this community fund. The other part of the community fund, and what is, is much more entertaining than raising money, is connecting the dots. We're all involved in different community organizations and different things, and how is it that we can, by working together, make things happen? Like I said, we don't have a ton of money, excuse me, with $300,000 in the endowment. It doesn't generate a ton of money for grants, but it does generate a little bit. And what we try to do is figure out how that little bit of money can spark something else or seed something else. We've worked with the city and the county emergency services during COVID to raise money for COVID relief for our nonprofits that were stressed during COVID by all the extra services they needed to provide. We partnered with Rotary to get a grant for the mission clinic at First Baptist Church. There was a group of folks that were interested in why didn't we have the Dolly Parton Imagination Library here in Franklin County. A group of women got together and said, hey, we want to do this, so we were able to partner with them, give them some seed money and match, so that all happened. Now we have the Imagination Library here. Most recently, the CARES Coalition with the Umbrellas in the Alley, they were starting out. They were not a nonprofit yet, but we agreed to be their fiscal agent so that they could go ahead and start raising money for their efforts. So this is all about partnerships and connecting dots and things like that. So, which is why, before I turn this over to Sean, is how the whole thing with parks got involved. The folks at Parks, and those of you that are on the Parks Board, have talked about, we need to start a nonprofit that's specific to parks. And that requires a lot of energy and money and people paying attention to this, that, and the other thing. So the Bluegrass Community Foundation, through the Franklin County Community Fund, was able to connect the folks at Parks so that they could set up not only an endowment, which will be forever and ever and ever and generate income to do parks projects, also an operating fund to do general parks improvements that folks in the private, that want to donate to that to make things happen in the parks, which is what we're going to talk about later. And then also an operating account to raise money and fund the tree canopy initiative, which is going on. So anyway, I hope that explains a little bit about the Franklin County Community Fund and why we're here and why we're involved, in this and with a number of projects around the community. So I'm going to introduce Sean Pickens, who's the Director of Parks here, and is going to explain the three funds a little bit better that the parks are going to use and how that works.
No applause needed, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and speak tonight. And first of all, I want to thank and express our deep appreciation for this donation that we're going to receive tonight from Bourbon on the Banks. As I mentioned, if you were brave enough to join us for the cold weather tour a few minutes ago, Frankfort Parks has been around a long time, and there's some Parks Board folks here, as well as past directors here that's have worked on our park system for years. But like everything else, things get old, things start falling apart, and city funding and grants get harder to get. City funding becomes more stretched with the various different projects and initiatives around town. So these types of donations that we're going to receive tonight is extremely important for us moving into the future to try to keep our parks up to snuff. One of my first projects when I was hired a little over 3 years ago was Dolly Graham Park. And basically I was told if you do anything in the next couple of years is take care of Dolly Graham Park. So we did. We still have more work to do down there, but we spent a lot of time working on Dolly Graham. But now we're turning our focus not completely away from Dolly Graham, but to some other parks in the system that need some love as well. So thank you to Bourbon on the Banks for the donation tonight. It will go a long way to beginning renovations at Riverview. As Harry had mentioned, we do have the three funds set up for the Frankfort Parks Foundation, which I have a brochure here that I'd please like for everybody to take one when we get done. I'll hand them out, and it's got information about the foundation and our funds and a way that you can donate. Here's a little QR code on the back, and there's a website that you can go and donate if you're interested, or if you have friends or families or other organizations that are interested in parks and everything that we do. How you can donate and what your money will go to is on this flyer here, or they can contact me at any time and I can explain. Our first fund is our general operating fund. So it's basically a checking account. But the folks that donate to it, you can be very specific on your donation, or you can be as general as you want. So if you say I want it to go to Riverview Park and I want it to go for benches or for lighting or for safety equipment or cameras or to the boat dock if you're a water enthusiast, you can be very specific on where you want your money to go. So when that donation comes in, who ordered the train to come in? You can't donate to the railroad. So you can be very specific on where your donation goes. And then the money goes through the Bluegrass Community Foundation, which they monitor our funds. And so when your check goes in or your credit card donation, whatever, and you know what you want it to go for, it restricts me or our Parks Department or our Parks Advisory Board to where it can be spent. So it has to go to where you have asked that donation to go to. And the Bluegrass Community Fund, which is based out of Lexington, monitors that and makes sure when we apply for a grant, if we say we're gonna put it to downtown Frankfort instead of going to Riverview where you asked it to go, then they won't let us spend it. It has to go where it goes. So it's very controlled on where that goes. Or you can be as general as possible. If you're saying, look, I love Parks and Recreation, that director is super awesome and you just want to give him money, then you can just send us a check and we'll oh, okay, sorry. And then we'll make sure it goes to the right place. So you can be as general as you want, or you can be very, very specific and detailed on how you want your donation to be used. So our second fund is our endowed fund, which is set up very similar to the way the Franklin County funds is. So, bequeaths or larger donations over time. Obviously, we can't touch the principal, so the principal stays there for the lifetime, for forever. and then as those donations earn interest, then we can apply for grants off of the interest earned off of those over time. So then our third fund is our downtown tree plant fund, which if you live in and around the downtown, Alex Cunningham is heading up the project. We have, how many trees have you planted? 120 trees so far have been planted just in downtown Franklin. So Alex has been working very hard and on that project. So that fund is set up specifically for that project. And we've had some very generous donations to the foundation to that fund for that tree plant. So we appreciate those donations as well. So some things that for like the general fund, for example, or the endowment, some projects that and some causes that we have in the parks that we're looking for in the foundation. Just a couple examples, athletic scholarships. Every year, our youth sports, we have a multitude of folks reach out to us and say, we can't afford the sign-up fee for my kid to play baseball or to play softball. And I know when Jim was director, and since I've been director, we've never turned any kid away. So we will scholarship them, but sometimes we have to eat that cost and pay for it in-house because we don't want to turn any kid away. So donations to the foundation can help go towards athletic scholarships, which will help offset the cost of the jersey and the hat and the equipment that they need to play ball. So that's one example that donations to the foundation can go for. And they can go for larger projects. The program we have now is memorial benches. We have a program to where you can donate to the foundation. We have a company that has very nice benches, and they have basically carved into the bench and any kind of writing that you like, in memory of a loved one, or in honor of somebody, or a family, or something like that. We honored at Dolly Graham. We honored Dolly Graham, who was a long-time Parks employee, with a memorial bench. Her family did. Derek Graham and their family donated for a bench at Dolly Graham. So that's just a couple things. And then there's larger projects. We have a Parks Master Plan that we're currently in, and we have a multitude of big projects and small projects, from tennis court renovations, athletic field renovations, lighting, infrastructure projects, all across the board, that any kind of donation will help go a long way. So those are kind of some of the projects that we do, and I'll be glad to answer. I'll be hanging around throughout the program. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have along the way. So this donation that we're receiving tonight is our first for our general fund to go directly to several projects inside the park. This is our first major donation that we've received. We've received a few minor donations, but this is by far outside. Like I said, we've got several very generous donations for our tree plant, but this is our first major donation for our general fund. So thank you very much. And we hope it's just the start of a beautiful friendship. We love having Bourbon on the Banks at Riverview. It's a perfect marriage. Thousands upon thousands of people that come for Bourbon on the Banks, and they're in one of our city parks, and they're coming downtown. So it's a win-win for parks, it's a win-win for the city, and everything else. So thank you very much. I'm going to introduce Diane Strong to come up and speak a little bit about Bourbon on the Banks and a few other items.
Hello. Thank you guys for coming out. I know I typically prefer better weather for Bourbon on the Banks, and if I had to choose, I would choose that weather then, and we'll just suffer tonight. But I appreciate you coming and going to the park where it was cold and windy. But anyway, so I should say that Bourbon on the Banks I'm really proud. I think the whole board is really proud of where we've come and what we've done, and the ability to give back to our community. And it's so thrilling. 55% of the people that come to Bourbon on the Banks are from out of state, and it's huge. That's a lot of eyes on Frankfurt, and it's a lot of people coming here and spending their money and going home and telling their friends. And I think we've got a good thing going, and I hope that it continues to get better and better and bigger, and we can give back more and more to our community. I think as long as our tourists and our community and our people who live here benefit from what we do, it's got to be a good thing, right? I have to start by saying we couldn't do it without the city of Frankfurt. I work intimately with many people, the emergency management in Blair, and they're just absolutely phenomenal. And Parks, Christian specifically, I can't thank this guy enough. He volunteered, well, he was working Bourbon on the Banks last year and had to leave, I think, to coach some football. And then he came back, and I don't know, it's amazing how far this city has gone to take care of us. You know, it's garbage, and it's porta potties, and it's blocking roads, and it's just transportation, public transportation. It's non-ending. So I want to point out tonight we've got our mayor here in attendance, and Lane, and we've got Kelly May and Patricia and Lisa Unger. And so thank you for being here. We appreciate that. Along with that, I can't stress enough how important our sponsors are for this event. Community Trust Bank was our title sponsor last year, and Express Bank was responsible for Bourbon Street on Broadway, which is our community event that we give that's free for everybody. We invite lots of people. We see thousands of people down there from surrounding communities. So we love that we have a good sponsor for that. Goodwood has continually hosted the after party, which is wonderful. CRM, they also like to be called Red Draw. I'm not sure which name they're going by right now, but they donate money, but they also donate the use of the Mayo Underwood parking garage, which is wonderful because our attendees have a place to park, one location. It makes things very simple. Investors Heritage, Franklin County Fiscal Court was a sponsor this year. Yay, yes. Chenault and Hogue in West Bend was a joint sponsor. You know, Chenault and Hogue's, they insure our event, and I can call them and get insurance advice for our event, which I love. James Motor has been a continued sponsor. Charles T. Mitchell, they do our taxes as well. O.H. Ingram, they sponsored our pub stroll. Frankfurt Tourism is an in-kind sponsor that is just priceless. You know, they market our event for us and do a lot to bring visitors here. Matter of fact, when people call the tourism office, she encourages people to come to our event. We love that. Liquor Barn, which if you had some bourbon tonight, you get to take home your sample glass. They provide those glasses, and they have for the past 2 years, and they're going to continue to do it next year. Which sample glasses are not cheap, so we're happy to have that. And we hope that someday soon we will have a Liquor Barn here in Frankfurt. Jimmy John's, you know, they fed the KSU marching band, and that's not a bunch of kids, that's a bunch of adults, and they eat a lot. So I'm so thankful that they were able to cover that food for us. That saved us a lot of money and lots of running around because they delivered it right to them. So we want to thank Jimmy John's. Locals Pizza, they fed our volunteers, which, oh my God, I can't tell you how much we appreciate our volunteers. We couldn't do this event without them, you know it, and what we love is that our volunteers tend to come back every year, and they're phenomenal, and we're so thankful for them, and we're thankful for locals to be able to feed them some good, healthy, local food. And I mean, so that's a good reason to volunteer, if you guys. They did say they're coming back this year, so if you want some locals pizza, come on back. Wildcat Moving, which they've been a part of our event for the last 2 years, and they're coming back this year as well. They just take a lot of time and effort off of our hands to deliver tables and chairs, and they're great. Bourbon on Main and the Coop Bridge together were donators, and they're part of this too. So we appreciate them coming back. So I guess what we're here for is the fact that Bourbon on the Banks is donating $50,000 this year to their beneficiaries. And on behalf of my board, I can tell you that they're thrilled and they're happy and they're proud. And so I'm speaking on behalf of my board, by the way. I couldn't do this job without them and their guidance and their hard work, so thank you to my board too. So that $50,000 is broken down. We're giving $25,000 to the Parks Fund, and that money is going to go to help I mean, the big goal is to remove the invasive species off of the park line. I know that a lot of you guys were at the park and you heard about this, but the invasive species are strangling our adult trees, our growing trees that are supporting the bank. Those trees have long, deep root systems that hold that bank together, and when those trees are killed by these vines that are strangling them, they die, they fall over, and that bank is exposed. It's not a good thing. It also wraps around these trees, and instead of the tree looking like a tree, it looks like a giant bush, and we can't see the river in the summertime. So we're hoping to do two things, you know, beautify the park, but also save our riverbank a little bit. So that's goal number one, and we're having 2 work days. There's February 10th and February 24th from 9 a.m. until noon, where the community can come help with RIP, which is Remove Invasive Plants, I believe is what it stands for. Joyce Bender, who is leading that, is here tonight. We're just so thankful that that group is teaming up with us, because that $25,000 is going to go so much farther, knowing that we have volunteers and a group of people who are going to help do that with, you know, with as little money as possible. And then what can't be finished, we can come in and, you know, remove some trees or dead things that need to be taken care of. The other part, we're having some additional electric put in. We're repairing some water spigots that need to be repaired at the park. And we're possibly putting in some gravel where our food trucks will go, so that we're not destroying the land and not having issues with mud and stuff should we get rain. Not that we ever will, I mean, but if that should happen. $15,000 is for scholarships. Renee's gonna come up and talk about those scholarships in a second. And then $10,000 is going for the White Oak Initiative, and we also have a representative here to talk about what that's about. So, who's up next? Is it Renee?
Yep.
Yes, okay. Renee is gonna come up and talk about these scholarships.
Thank you, Diane. So in 2019, when Bourbon on the Banks was formed, we had a great festival director in Wendy Kobler, which some of y'all know, but I want to make sure you understand that this festival would not be what it is today without our current festival director, Diane Strong. So let's give her a hand. And several members of the board would not be on the board anymore. So the scholarship program, this was a partnership, Bourbon on the Banks. It really started from Kentucky State University, and it was taken over by the community. And the whole idea was to support scholarships at Kentucky State University and their fermentation distillation program. So the scholarship program will fund students either from Franklin County or from anywhere else that is attending Kentucky State University's fermentation distillation program. In addition, because we figured that there may be some Franklin County residents that want to take advantage of programs that may not be in this community, they can take college-level post-secondary education, fermentation, distillation programs through this scholarship program. Okay, so there's 2 ways to get you can come in to Franklin County and go to K-State and take advantage of scholarship, or you can be a student, or you don't have to be a student. You can be an adult, a grown person, take advantage of scholarship to go to the University of Kentucky, U of L, Eastern, Western, and all those places have programs, and we've reached out to them to let them know that the scholarship program is available. We hope that they take advantage of K-State, but if not, they want to go somewhere else. They have up to $2,500 per person. We have $15,000 total available for the scholarship program. The scholarship application is online right now, bourbononthebanks.org. You'll have to fish around there and figure where it's at, but it's pretty easy to find. And this scholarship round is for the fall semester 2023. The deadline is April 1st of this year, and the board of Bourbon on the Banks will be deciding, who the scholarship winners are. And if we don't get any, then I guess we'll give more money to the parks. No, the board will decide that next year. So with that, I don't really think, I think I've covered everything. It goes towards tuition assistance. As I said, $2,500, up to $2,500 per applicant. And so now I would like to introduce the Professor and Chair of the Department of Forestry and Natural Resources at the University of Kentucky, Dr. Jeff Stringer. He is on the steering committee of the White Oak Initiative.
Thank you, appreciate it. I want to, on behalf of the White Oak Initiative, I want to thank you for a contribution. I'll talk a little bit about what that contribution is going to do for White Oak. And I think most everybody in here, anyway, realizes that somehow or another White Oak has something to do with bourbon. Okay, a lot of people don't know that, but that's a fact. You know, and I normally say this, and I got to watch where I say it, I get in trouble. But you know, so White Oak is responsible for about 70% of the taste profile and all the color, right? So therefore, it's a wood product. And I get in trouble because I'm in the College of Ag, so the corn and the grain guys get mad at me automatically. I say, well, we'll share this, you know, glory in this. But unlike the grain situation where, you know, a corn plant, 4 or 5 months, okay, from start to finish, and you can change corn production, you can make more corn pretty easily if you want to. In the case of White Oak, in the case of trees, so those barrels that are sitting here, the trees that produce the staves that go in those barrels are somewhere between 80 and 120 years old. So when you think about growing a new crop of white oak, you better be doing that way in advance of before it's needed. Now, I was asked earlier, and I'll tell you a little bit about the White Oak Initiative in a second, but I was asked earlier, do we have an issue? Are we going to run out of white oak tomorrow and we're all drinking sake or whatever it is, right? And so the answer to that is no. We've got lots of white oak out there on the landscape right now, thank goodness. My last estimate is we're going to be running full, if everybody's producing it at full capacity, we're going to be generating about 6,000 to 8,000 barrels a day just in this state. That's a lot of oak being used, a lot of barrels, and luckily we have a big supply of it. So the issue is not now. The issue is we look at the data and all that. Of course, I'm a researcher, one of the many things I do at UK, looking out in the future. And when I mean future, not 5 years or 10 years, which is my planning horizon, right? But if you look out the 50, 60, 70, 80 years, we're going to have a reduction in the amount of white oak if we don't manage right, okay? And so the White Oak Initiative is all about ensuring sustainable management of white oak and the white oak forest, right, that cover from all the way up in the Lake States down to northern Alabama and the Appalachians up to the Ozarks. It covers a huge area. And white oak is really important in forests. So the White Oak Initiative is all about making sure we sustainably produce that so it's going to be available in the future. So we don't have a big drop off and we don't have issues. And the great thing about white oak is not only does it produce some pretty good bourbon, okay, if you do it right, but it's also, you know, it's the most wildlife palatable acorn in the woods. It is long lived. The trees can live up to 400 years old, thank goodness, right? And they provide home for, bats, birds, and everything else, right? So white oak is a tree that's important in the ecosystem and everybody can get behind it. And the White Oak Initiative was formed, again, to provide for sustainability of white oak. White oak's not going extinct. That's not a California condor issue. The issue is it's going to be reduced, and we want to make sure it's available, and you want to make sure it's in the ecosystem, so we got plenty of nice acorns for the wildlife. Right? And because of that interest in that, the White Oak Initiative formed with a wide variety of entities that are involved in it. Of course, we have distillers, obviously. We have the forest industries that use white oak for flooring and everything else you can think of, wood-wise, right? You've got conservation organizations and TNC and et cetera, that are involved in this, and pulp and paper companies and everybody. And that's very unique because there's not very many times in my career where you've had that host and that wide variety of stakeholders that have real interest in this species that can get behind good forest management, because the White Oak Initiative is all about sustaining our supply of white oak through good management of our forest. It's that simple. I don't tell a lot of people that because it's not very glamorous, right? It's hard to sell that one, you know. But that's what it's about. And so the money that of course we get grant money and those kind of things, and we have a lot of donations. Now some of the big companies are donors, okay? Names would be real familiar to you, have donated to them, are involved in it. You know, but we have a lot of small contributors as well. Small endowments, gifts like this are great, okay? Because we love to build that stakeholder-based support. And that money is being used, again, all pointing towards sustainability, but we're dealing with things like, for example, we have a lobbyist that is helping us in Congress right now to make sure with the staffers, to make sure the farm bill is put together right. So we got what we need in there for forest conservation, okay? So we're dealing with big picture things like that. You know, on my end of it, so we're dealing with producing educational materials for landowners, and I'm in charge of the Kentucky Master Logger program. So we have training programs on white oak management and white oak growth for loggers, for example, and training foresters and all those kind of things down on the ground. And ultimately, it's all about getting those practices done so that we have, in the case of this little meeting here, if you will, so we got plenty of bourbon in the future. So that's what the White Oak Initiative is about. And you can, of course, we have a website, right? So if you want to get more information, whiteoakinitiative.org, and you go there and see, you know, who's involved with that and different projects that are going on and how this money is going to be used. So again, on behalf of the White Oak Initiative, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is John Sucker, for those of you that don't know me, and I am the chair of Bourbon on the Banks, and I've got to say it's the coolest job I've ever had. We do lunch meetings a lot, so we don't bring a lot of lunch meetings, but man, when we get together after hours, we always have a good time. So if you want to join us sometime, please do so. I work with some fantastic people. Diane did a great job of thanking our sponsors and our community partners, and I will echo a lot of the same. Without our sponsors, this wouldn't be possible. We've got great partners that have been with us. Most of them have been with us since day one, and we have those that want to come on every year and help support this great cause. Hoping with this year's donations that it'll want to bring more people in, and our donations will be even greater next year. I can say that the 3 recipients of the funds this evening will be the same recipients for the funds at the end of our festival next year. So hopefully with the Parks Department, it will be an annual thing. And hopefully it'll be more money each time. So we appreciate our sponsors a lot. The City of Frankfort and the Franklin County Fiscal Court do a tremendous job in helping us. The city, the logistics of this event is huge. And for those of you that are with the city, we thank you all very much for your contribution. It's not a donation, it's a contribution. It's worth a lot of money. Just ask Eric Northcutt, he will tell you certainly how big of a deal that the infrastructure and everything getting this together is all about. A couple of the board members I want to recognize. Renee True, who you've already seen, is he's on the executive committee. He's our treasurer. And he's been with us since day one. Kristen Cantrell is also with us. She's the vice president of the board, been with us since day one as well. Dan Hines is our secretary. That makes up the executive committee. Karen Thompson's here. Karen is in charge of our volunteers. And man, that's a tough job. But she has done a tremendous job with our volunteers. And, you know, we might have 150 volunteers, but only 50 of them work. We only want that 50 to come back next year. And she does a really good job of overseeing those, because if you were with us in 2019, that was bumpy, to say the least. I saw Eric Northcutt earlier. Again, he's on our board in charge of logistics, and again, just a huge deal. You know, 2 days of road closures and having a lot of expensive bourbon and items down on the riverbank that, you know, have to be looked after. And that's part that falls under his purview. AMZ Winning has been one of our board members since day one. He was your bartender tonight, so we really appreciate him. Am I missing anybody else that's on the board? I don't think so. But Diane Strong, my goodness, she is a champion. She makes our jobs easier, and we try to make her job as easy as we can as well, but she does a fantastic job. She is really the reason behind the success of this event. To the degree that it's grown to, she's done it. I will take zero credit other than whenever she asks for something, I just say yes, ma'am. I know my role. But the success of this event is continuing to grow and will continue to do so. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And Diane, if you will join me, we're gonna give some money away.
Does the rest of the board want to come join us, please? So these presentation checks are really expensive, so rather than do 3 of them, I'm really tight with the money. You can ask these guys, like I'm a penny pincher. I want to make sure our money goes as far as possible, so we've got all 3 of them listed on this nice presentation check. You guys got to give this over. It's your time to shine.
Yes.
So if somebody could get a photo, that would be great.
We want to get in front of the podium? You might want to move the podium. Let's go in front of the podium.
Yes. We should say thank you to the Foundry. They gave us this space for free tonight, and so we are so appreciative of that. Does anybody want to say something? Thank you again for coming.
Can we get our recipients up to be in the
Oh yes, get the recipients up here. Please. Yeah, you guys can try to grab it and fight over it a single time.
It's not official. We can make it. Okay, turn to
Squeeze in like you like each other. Can't see you, Aaron.
Thanks for smiling.
Probably think, yeah, local